Welcome back! It's been a while since we put out one of these videos with an update, so I think, well, we got a lot of stuff to cover today. So bear with me. We're going to cover a lot of stuff in, well, hopefully a short little video. But really, before we get into this, I got to say it again. We're off the grid up here with no source of reliable internet access. Zero. We have been on a wait list for about 6 months for Starlink satellite-based internet, but due to the global chip shortage, apparently we're still 6 to 8 months out before we'll see anything up here. So for those of you who've been following along with our progress, we will get back to hopefully some sort of a regular video series whenever we get internet access. Right now I just got to go into town with my cell phone and wait for 5 to 6 hours for a video to upload, which these days we just don't have that much free time. So that's enough of that. Let's get into what's going on out here. I think the first thing we should talk about is really a big, huge milestone, and that's our rough-in electrical inspection. If you're not too savvy on what a rough-in electrical is, don't worry, we're going to cover that. So basically, a rough-in inspection just means that the bones of our wiring system through this house are up to code, and we can go ahead and start covering the walls with both insulation and sheetrock and never see the wiring again. It'll be buried forever! So really, there's a few things I should say about our project out here. We're building in an area with no real building department. That means there's no inspector that comes out to check our structure and our engineering and make sure we built the roof right or any of that stuff. We're on our own. If this house falls down, it's our fault. And really, that's one of the reasons we bought this property out here, is because we're able to build on our own without a whole lot of hassle. But what we do have here is state electrical inspections and plumbing inspections and septic inspections. We do have to have permits for all those things, and they're sticklers. I mean, they go by the code, which they're supposed to. So the inspector that came out here for the electrical, he went by the book and went by the code. So as you can imagine, the National Electric Code, or NEC, is a fairly complex piece of literature. I would say it's about 1 billion pages long, and it's a pretty boring read. So we're not going to cover every little itty-bitty aspect of the National Electric Code. But we are going to cover a few things that the inspector, when he came out for this rough-in inspection, seemed fairly concerned about, or at least he paid a lot of attention to it. First and foremost, the second he stepped foot through the door, he started looking for outlets and the spacing of the outlets. In essence, you can't really be any more than 6 feet away from an outlet on any given span of wall. And of course, with outlet spacing, there's exceptions to the rules. Kitchens are different, bathrooms are different, things around countertops and sinks. There's just complexity to everything. But we did surprisingly well with the inspection. There was only a couple of things that he picked apart, and that was that we needed we needed 3 extra outlets. All that were in places that I thought, and even the inspector thought, were pointless, but by code we needed them. One is behind an opening door in our bedroom. It's just the length of the wall. We need it. Another is next to our sliding door, which is another unusable space. And the third is really in the floor of this upstairs, in the floor next to where the stairwell opening is. Apparently a railing counts as a wall these days, or within 6 feet of any direction, you got to have another outlet. So we had to put one in the floor, which Brenda's actually really not excited about that. She thinks it's going to look hideous. But that's what the inspector said we need, so that's what we're going to do, because he's the boss. Beyond outlet spacing, the next thing he really paid attention to was the stapling of wires. Code says that if you use a plastic receptacle box, you need to have the wires stapled within 8 inches of that box, as well as roughly every 3.5 feet of a run. So a whole lot of staples in a whole lot of places. And beyond that, what he in particular wanted was all of the ground and neutral wires in all of the receptacles and lighting circuits tied together and then tied into the main electrical panel, so they're all connected to our house's ground, which is a couple of ground rods driven in the ground outside. All these wires are supposed to be tied together in some sort of junction box, but a good portion of our ceiling lights or the overhead lights are going to be using these new type of LED canless light fixtures. Since these are installed after the ceiling and all your finishes are complete, there really is no junction box in the ceiling right now. That doesn't mean we can just leave the wires hanging loosey-goosey. We still did have to strip the ends and tie the wires all together and then just coil them up out of the way so when we put sheetrock on they don't get pinched. Pretty simple. And really the last thing that was, I guess, high on his priority list of things to check out was our main electrical panel and solar system, how all that tied together, and placement of breakers, if we had the proper size breakers and type of breakers. And he checked out the amount of breakers we have going to different portions of the house. Like, for example, our kitchen requires 4 separate circuits. That's a lot for one tiny little kitchen. But, you know, that's the way it goes these days. Nothing we can do about it, and we're happy to comply. So, I should say that I'm not an electrician. I've never wired a house, but this wiring project was actually a pretty fun thing for me to do. It was a head scratcher and complex at times, but for the most part, it was just a really enjoyable experience that, you know, once you got going and in a groove, it seemed like at the end of the day, a whole lot of stuff got done, and it felt pretty productive, which is kind of nice, because a lot of days around here, it seems like nothing gets done. Even though we're working our butts off, it just seems like we're spinning our wheels. And yeah, the electrical, that was something that was pretty satisfying. I'll leave it at that. But surprisingly, for never wiring a house before, just missing a few outlets, that seemed like a pretty big accomplishment, really. Success to me. So before we move on from our electrical stuff to other areas of what we've been doing in the house, our solar system, I will cover that in another video at a later date. But right now we're still not 100% approved on the solar system. It's been sitting on someone's desk in the state of Idaho's electrical department for 2.5 months now. Nobody's even looked at it. They're that far behind that the plan review portion of our solar system hasn't even been touched. So until that's 100% approved, I probably won't get into a whole lot of detail about that, but I will say right now, even though we're not supposed to be running it, it works like a champ. It's been powering the house for about 3 months. All of our power tools, lighting, and temporary outlets, all that sort of stuff. It's kind of amazing to have it up and working well, really. So I think that's it for the electrical stuff, at least for now. Once we basically finish the house, we will have a final electrical inspection, which will cover some more stuff that I'm sure we'll talk about then. But I think that's all we need to talk about with the electrical stuff for now. So let's move on. So that inspection happened about a week ago, and as soon as we were clear to start installing or covering up walls, Brenda really hopped to it. As you can tell behind me or just looking around, a good portion of this house is insulated, and that's because she just is working her butt off on that, and been doing a pretty good job. She's got maybe 80% of the house done right now, or at least the walls. We haven't done any ceilings yet. That'll happen after sheetrock goes up, and we're leaving a lot of stuff open right now just because we've got plumbing and HVAC stuff that's happening next, really. So she's going through as much insulation as possible, and then we'll finish it out once we get the plumbing and HVAC stuff in. As well as insulation, we've started putting vapor barriers up in the ceiling, because a big portion of this house we can start sheetrocking anytime we want, which is going to happen soon if we can get sheetrock. That's another story. Supply issues have been really tough. We've had sheetrock on order for a while, but we just can't seem to get it, or at least get it delivered. So that's another story. Really, our plan is to try to get the upstairs of this place finished as, well, really finished, so we can live upstairs and then work on the downstairs. And that'll make it a whole lot more comfortable place to live. So beyond electrical stuff, you might be wondering what else we've been up to. And really a lot of stuff. We're constantly working on this place, not only the house in specific, but the land in general. 40 acres is a big chunk of dirt. And it seems like every storm and every big snowfall, there's trees that come down. So it seems like we're doing a lot of logging, a lot of clearing of dead down trees, and a whole lot of just digging and shoveling snow. That we can't get away from. But other than just general land maintenance, some of the other things of note that we've been doing, we have been working on installing a backup generator for this house, because really it's pretty obvious to us anyways that during the middle of winter, there's a couple of months where we just realistically won't make enough power from our solar system to power the house. And that backup generator is going to be kind of crucial. So we'll cover the generator for sure in a different video, because that's kind of an important deal. But other than the generator, we've got propane lines run, the gas lines plumbed through the house. We've got the propane tank just installed. We've been working on a sump in the basement, which has been a surprisingly big ordeal. We've got, well, that's another thing I think we'll cover in more detail at another point, but basically we've got days into jackhammering out a little square sump in our basement. This house is built on solid granite, and, well, that was a major ordeal, jackhammering out that hole. So we'll cover that down the road as well, but beyond those few things, there's lots of other stuff going on. But I think I've rambled enough for today. But before we shut this video down, I should just say we're actually heading down to our boat in Mexico in a couple of days, actually. We're going to be gone for a few weeks. We're going to eat some tacos. We're going to polish up the racing stripe. We're going to check out our old boat. So we're going to be out of here avoiding winter for about 3 weeks. And I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm sure we'll talk to you when we get back, and hopefully have some sort of update on our boat in Mexico. All right. As always, thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.